Welcome, everyone, to Conscious Human Evolution podcast and show. I am host Jackson Moore, and with me today I have.
The wonderful and amazing Dr. Kiza Shine. Today, Jackson, I am hoping we could talk about souls, personalities, collective consciousness, and entities. How does that sound?
Hey, that sounds awesome. What are you going to teach us?
That our soul is a really beautiful, amazing space inside this human avatar.
I think that's one thing about the teachings of Seth that are really kind of set aside and next level, if you will, when it comes to spiritual stuff. Um, as you may know, and a lot of people that have been familiar with the Seth materials, some of the people at my public lecture this last weekend actually said that they had read the Seth books. In fact, two or three people said they read them all and were as fascinated with that as I am. That level of perception from Seth being, way out here and having the scope of visibility um, that it does. And we think of Seth as a male personality, but it's kind of a male name, but obviously the soul has no sex, right? But you get this vast amount of knowledge about the soul, about entities, about consciousness, and how it is literally pervading everything. But one of the things that I think is that I have found that's unique in the teachings of Seth and Yeshua, Christ, really tried to articulate this, but back then there wasn't the context, if you will, to be able to articulate it. And so Seth does a really good job in articulating some of the information and the knowledge about the soul. And really, that's where we focus to evolve humanity, right? So, conscious human evolution, again, is a nonprofit corporation. We talk about that in another one of our podcasts and how we got here to form the nonprofit to be the global teaching platform for Seth, Christ, and the angels that all channel through me to teach the timeless truths about all reality, physical and non-physical reality. And I'll just mention here that the timeless truths, why do we say the timeless truths, right?
Right.
So the timeless truths is about the truth about the nature of all reality, physical and non-physical, and how it is created, how it literally appears to all the five human senses. So everything that is a physical object that is personified and projected as a physical object in our universe, literally, how did it come into being? How does it evolve? How does it get created? And the life cycle, if you will, on physical plane, but also about multidimensional aspects of the soul and consciousness and everything else. But the fascinating thing about, I think, Seth, the way that he articulates information about the soul, is that he talks about the soul being a non-physical entity, if you will. We call it an entity. So an entity could mean a soul, but it could mean a collection of souls because that is our definition of an entity, right? It means a thing. And in this case, it's a non-physical entity of consciousness. And so souls, as Seth says, a body of consciousness that is fully lucid, aware of itself, can literally create a soul, just as human parents create children. An entity can create a soul or a personality of a soul, and basically through the thought of or intention to be able to intend to create a new soul or a new personality. And so, as we create children, entities and souls create new souls and new personalities. And so, then that soul, a body of consciousness, will be in and of itself aware of itself as a unique unit of consciousness. It understands that it is eternally connected to the entity that gave it existence, and that throughout its development, it can use free will and choice, and it can decide basically the path of evolution for that soul to take. Now, that soul can, or that entity, that body of consciousness, can decide that it wants to incarnate or not. So, both souls and personalities can choose a non physical path that they choose to develop out um, away from physical reality, if you will, and non-physical reality, and develop in ways and forms that is meaningful in that direction, or it can decide that it wants to incarnate into the human body to interact with all forms of consciousness in three-dimensional context to be able to develop here, right? And learn to use itself. Now,
Is there any purpose for one or the other that you're aware of? Like, my human brain is like, is one better than the other? Do you see what I'm saying?
I think it's kind of different names for the same thing, and it's really drawing straws to see which name that you want to refer to it. And all of this is based on the human perception that we think things are separate when they're really not, right? So now, a soul, let's say a body of consciousness that is outside of physical reality, can choose to have an incarnation. It's going to project a portion of itself, not all of itself, because it cannot fit that amount of energy focused in and through a one single physical human being. It will project a portion of itself into the human body. So before it does so, the soul will literally decide. It'll go through what Seth calls the time of choosing. And the soul will decide on the time period of human history that you're going to appear, physical dimension you're going to appear in. And each period of human history, is in like yesterday, tomorrow, or 1,000 years that way or that way, is a dimension of experience for the soul. All right, so we could think of them as lifetimes. The soul sees them as dimensions of experience. And so you decide as a soul upon what period in human history you're going to appear, where you're going to incarnate, what country, what language, the social economic conditions, whether you're going to be in a rich family or a poor family, and geographically where this and that. So all of those decisions are literally made before you incarnate. You're not stuffed into a body when you don't have a choice. You make the choices, and you will choose as a soul the lessons that you plan to learn for that lifetime. So you'll have a to-do list when you go to incarnate. From the moment you incarnate, once that soul projects a portion of itself into the human body, then the gestalt consciousness, meaning more than the sum total of the mother and the child, that soul combined with the consciousness in the soul of the mother will create the flesh of the human body for the baby to develop. Now, the soul that is going to inhabit that body will come and visit that body, but it does not always have to stay present. In other words, it can visit and it can leave again, but it still will have a heartbeat because of the gestalt consciousness with the mother. And then,
Through the entire time in utero?
correct,
Okay.
correct. Now, the closer it gets toward birth, then generally the soul will commit and say, okay, this lifetime is right for me. I'm going to be a male in this lifetime or a female because the soul doesn't have a sex, right? It should be a balance of both energies. And so it will decide upon this lifetime is right. I'm going to stay with this particular body and then develop this way. From that point, then the soul will then fix that portion of itself, that portion of its focus through the physical body. Now, of course, it is eternally connected to the main entity, and the greater soul or the oversoul is sometimes the way that people refer to that, and that would be like your greater self. So Giza's greater self would be your soul, which has many personalities. Right. So in this lifetime, Giza is one of the personalities. You could be a male in another dimension of reality, another time frame, another lifetime, and that would be another personality. So the personality of the soul can develop through the human body on the human physical plane, or they can choose not to incarnate and develop as a personality outside of conscious three-dimensional reality.
Can it do both at the
So
same time? Of course it can, right? If time is an illusion?
yes, yeah, it can. And there's like fragments of consciousness and stuff like that. That's a little more advanced, and we won't really get into that so much. So the main soul will, what we would consider an entity, and in our book, The Nature of Consciousness, we talk about the souls and the capabilities of the human soul and of human consciousness. The way that we refer to it is the soul and the entity is the same thing. So we use that interchangeably. But again, then you'll have personalities of the soul, and each incarnation personality develops. So Jackson develops as a personality. I'm funny, I'm down to earth, I'm this, I'm that, right? So I develop my personality, you develop yours, which is different from mine. And then in other lifetime incarnations that we think of lifetimes, um, we would be developing other personalities of ourself, which is the oversoul, right? So then, because there is no physical boundaries between conscious, there's psychological and vibrational frequency ranges, but there is no physical separation between any consciousness of anything, hence omnipresence of God, source, creator, all that is, the universe, right? Omnipresence means everywhere, all dimensions simultaneously, which is very applicable because then that brings into how do we create reality? We create it by recognizing that it's already within us. It's literally where we are. And it's only our five human senses that thinks it's separate from us, right? So that's another subject. So we have the soul and the entity that we define pretty much in our book as being the same thing, and meaning the same thing in the context that we use them. And other people may define them other ways. But then the personalities then develop. Now, they all have, as all consciousness does, eternally, it has free will, and it can choose to develop in whatever path it wants. And in the moment, every moment, it can choose a different path. And so, as Seth says, in physical life, we have a conscious mind, which directs our soul and consciousness as to what we want to create in our life. You have a conscious mind, he said, you can change your own mind, right? So, which means you can change your path. And so the soul will come here and incarnate. And once it is then projecting portions of itself into the human body and it's born, now the soul has a human body to focus that portion of its consciousness through. Now you have a human brain that is going to be within the body. The brain is a physical mechanism, literally, that is born in this lifetime only. It knows only this lifetime, and the brain does not know anything from any other lifetime unless it perceives it through the consciousness. So it has visibility to this lifetime and this lifetime only. Now, I don't know if you want to get into reincarnational stuff, but we can if you want. Once we step down that path. But it's very important that people realize that your brain is a physical mechanism that only has visibility within this lifetime scope, that your five human senses are connected to the brain. You got your smell, touch, all of the senses of the five human senses is what we call a five human sense filter. It is literally a filter through which the soul is perceiving three-dimensional reality. So it's like your soul is looking through your physical flesh to perceive three-dimensional reality and use the five human senses to navigate the three-dimensional plane.
It
And
kind of
so,
sounds like one of those Oculus games, like the 3D video games that you get to choose. It's like
mhm.
the reality of it is being projected through the human body. Yeah.
It is. Okay, so this is very, very important. This is very important for the people who want to learn to change their lives, that want to change your path, job, money, material, healing, health, creating miracles, manifestation, you name it. If it's physical reality, it can be done, and the soul can do it. If one soul can do it, all souls can do it. The difference is your rational mind, whether it believes it can or not. Okay, so um, as far as the souls and the entity goes, souls and entities have no physical boundaries. Those that are like will form attraction to and connections with other souls. They can literally merge, and one personality can be the part of multiple souls. So, multiple souls can play a role in the development of one personality. For example, I am what you would call a my soul, that Seth calls Thomas. So in our book, he refers to me as Jackson Thomas. Jackson, the mortal man. Thomas, the immortal being. Right. So mortal, immortal, human being.
Hmm.
Um, and so that portion of me can connect with other souls and everything and entities. In my case, I am part of what the world knows as Seth, which is a conscious collective. And Seth has many souls, many personalities, and many entities that are all connected together that form a massive, what you would call, I suppose you could think of it as like a collection of thousands of archangels, but it is a massive body of consciousness that is connected intimately with all of these other souls and entities and personalities. Through that, it evolves and it learns in every moment of what we would think of as time. But because it exists as your soul does outside of space and time, you are only perceiving one instance of your own soul within space and time. So eternally, your soul is outside of space and time, which means it has access to all things in all lifetimes. So again, your brain has access to this lifetime only, limited scope. Your keyhole is this big. The soul can see all lifetimes, all incarnations, those of itself, those of its neighbors, those of others. It can literally merge with others and perceive through others. Like a soul could literally, I could perceive your reality through your soul, looking out of your eyes. I can perceive reality as a tree and how it perceives the environment in which it is within a forest. There is no boundaries that the soul has as far as perception. It is only the perception of the rational mind that really closes us off from thinking that these things are separate from us because we perceive three-dimensional reality, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to navigate three-dimensional reality. You'd have realities on top of one another, and sometimes that happens with crazy people where they lose that um, dimensional focus. And so, in my lecture this past weekend, I had a lecture. I explained it this way. So, with reincarnational lifetimes, your soul will project a portion of itself into down in vibration into a human body, and you'll incarnate, let's say, as a male over here in 1896, and over here you're in 2005 as a female, and over here you're in something else, right? It will project a portion of itself in multiple lifetimes. So over here you're 92 years old and you're a male. Over here you're female and you're 4 years old, right? So each one of these we perceive as a reincarnational lifetime. But because of the nature of time and space as only being an illusion, then all of these lifetimes are simultaneous. So to us, we think of them as lifetimes because we're thinking in a physical lifetime context. To the soul, they are a dimension of experience. So this one is a dimension of experience. This one is a dimension of experience. It does not perceive them as lifetimes, which is a cycle, a beginning and an end. Soul has no cycle, beginning and end. It only knows existence. It exists outside of time, it's space. It's immortal, eternal. It's just ever growing. And so,
Isn't that why sometimes we can experience things and not know why we know it? Because our
yes.
brain can't conceptualize that, but we just know that we know things, and it's because we're living in that multidimensional.
So that would be a good example of clear cognizance in what Seth and I call direct knowing, right? Direct knowing and direct knowledge is knowledge and knowing that is at the level of the soul. So that comes to you through the vibration of your soul, which means the human brain and the rational mind may or may not understand it. And it may or may not put it into context that it can understand. So it may sense that it's there, but not be able to relate it in a context because it's used to thinking in three-dimensional terms, right? Now, with the evolution of humanity, with conscious human evolution, the species is literally, humanity as a species is literally heading where we will use clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairgustance, all of our clair abilities to be able to relate not only to all other humans, but to relate to the plants, the animals, the trees, the earth, the planet, the water, the environment, everything. And when you realize that the soul is literally in everything because there is no separation, it's only an illusion. And the soul is in the tree, it is in the money, it is in the health, it is in all of those things that we want in physical reality. And there is no separation of self. It is that belief in connectedness, that is belief within the rational mind that will then include those things into your experience. right? So we have souls, we got personalities of those souls, we have entities, and then as Seth says, some of those entities can then merge with other entities and become conscious collectives. So if they have like goals, like you and I are doing the podcast together, we have like goals. We want to help uplift humanity. We want to bring love and light and the messages of timeless truth of Seth and Christ and the angels to all of humanity. So when you have like goals, then you can, as a soul or an entity, merge with others to form conscious collectives to be able to um, affect that change. And of course, they work in and through all humans. Your soul works through the human body. Angels can enter into your consciousness and work through your body. You know, you're walking down the street and somebody's about to cross the street and you say, "Oh, I love that purse." And a vehicle comes running through the red light and they would have stepped out in front of it. And an angel just worked through you to intervene to stop a woman that would have stepped out in front of the bus, right? So these entities can and do work through us in that manner.
I think that happens a lot. And
It happens every day.
I don't think that we realize how much magic is really there, right? It's so
That
beautiful.
is true. Yes. And really that's where we start is the awareness. So step one, as Seth talks about in the book, the nature of consciousness, you can't use the tools that you literally have eternally as a soul unless you're first A, aware that you have them, and B, you know how to use them and you practice at it. And so, all eternity in every lifetime, you have all of these abilities that you could tap into, where you can literally tap into other lifetimes and you can perceive, as I do, and others do as well, you can literally perceive incarnation lessons that another, version of you has lived in another lifetime. What were the incarnation lessons? What did I learn? What was I good at? What was I not? And that one, I used to play a guitar. I've always liked music. I always thought I could play a guitar, but I've never really learned. In this lifetime, you can draw upon that knowledge and literally learn to play the guitar much easier, faster, and quicker because you've done it in this other lifetime. Now, you think that lifetime is separate from this, but it's not because you're connected through the entity and the soul eternally. So if your belief is that it is separate, then to you and your reality, you will create it separate. If you understand the multidimensional aspects of the soul and that they're inclusive, that you literally have access to that, then you yourself will open the door to be able to perceive such knowledge. So you can tap into other lifetimes. You can see them in your dreams. You can see them in daydreams. You can feel them. You can have visions. And many people do. So dreams, visions, deja vu, past life memories, and everything else, they're all possible when you open up the multidimensional aspects of the soul. And so, as far as conscious collectives go, there are conscious collectives that have nothing to do with three-dimensional reality at all. To us, they don't interact with three-dimensional realities and consciousness. There's three-dimensional reality focus. So, for example, in the original Seth books, there was another entity that is kind of an outer layer or an outer portion, if you will, a different vibrational frequency of Seth entity, and Jane referred to that as Seth 2, right? The numerical 2. So Seth 2. And occasionally that entity has come through to me a couple of times. Most of the time it does not. And Seth explains that it's an outer layer, if you will, of another entity through which he has formed an association through his work in non physical realities in other dimensions that don't have physical context. And so therefore it almost never interacts with three-dimensional reality and the consciousness that incarnates into three-dimensional forms and context. It's not a thing it plays with, if you will. And that particular entity has come through Jane a couple of times to explain, we know of your existence, and part of the energy that gives us existence also gives you existence. And though, essentially we're not neighbors, we're distant neighbors, if you will, our love pervades your dimension as much as it does ours in any other dimension, and that there's, no separation between them. So that entity has come through to me much different. Um, it really doesn't have a personality. It's straightforward, just articulation, but it uses the Seth entity to speak through, communicate through, because the Seth entity will translate the vibration into words, which to us then sound like English sentences, coming to us clairaudiently. You know what I mean? So there's all these different aspects, and it's so funny because I can't just give a lecture or teach about the soul without teaching about personalities, and I can't teach about personalities without teaching about entities, and I can't teach about entities without really talking about conscious collectives and some of these other things, because there is no division. There are just separations in frequencies and psychological and psychic separations, uniquenesses of self. So you get a
So
question or
I do have a question. So the soul in this particular human experience that we are living now is Giza and Jackson, right? The soul, what is its main role for growth and transformation? Like, what is the purpose of that? Is it so the conscious collective can have a new experience? Like, why are we playing in this realm? Do you know?
so all consciousness is obviously an inseparable portion of what people call God, but Seth calls God all that is being a present tense, because there is no future, there is no past, there's only the now moment. And so all that is, meaning all that is in every dimension, physical, non-physical, and um, you know all of that inclusively. And so I think there's a matter of separation perception from the human rational mind that perceives us to be separate from other people, other individuals. And it's when we get beyond that, when we learn the innate abilities of our soul to tap into the multidimensional aspects, to be able to bring those to the forefront of our perception, that we open up the visibility and the abilities that we have to be able to create our lives and navigate three-dimensional reality and stuff. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I know that there's so much more to talk about on this. I think we should roll this into another episode
Okay.
and continue this conversation if that works for you. But before we sign off, where can our listeners find out more information or join the team?
Okay. So if anybody wants more information, they can go to our website is conscioushumanevolution.org. I do have an author website. The author website, jacksonwmoore.com. That is more about me and the author, my life, and kind of my journey and how I got here. It does have the books on there as well. And then conscioushumanevolution.org is the platform for the teachings. It has our event schedule on there for my public events, appearances, classes, lectures. There's many more things that's coming up, announcements. Our audiobook that's coming up at the end of February is the target for the release on that. So lots more information on there. And of course, they can select to contact us, send us questions that potentially we could answer here on the podcast and on future shows, and reach out to us, get on the email list, and that sort of thing. So go there for more information. We'd love to hear from you.
And if they like, share, subscribe, you want to talk about that?
Yes, I do actually want to talk about that, because everybody says, with a podcast or videos that are on YouTube and everything else, like, share, subscribe. What we want you to understand from our show, from our podcast, is that it is the goal of Seth and Christ consciousness, the angels, to get the messages that we are speaking, that we are teaching on this particular podcast to all of humanity. Their goal is to reach as many people across the planet, hundreds of millions of people, in 43 languages, in every form possible, in every media format possible. So we have hard copy books, we have printed books, we have Kindle, we have ebooks, we have videos, we have audiobooks, every single thing in multiple languages around the world. And what I want people to understand is that when they take the energy, when they take the conscious choice to forward our material, to share it, to promote it, to put it on their Facebook or their social media, whatever else, they then become a link in consciousness through which these entities reach the world. You are literally connecting yourself to the mission and growing conscious human evolution.
That's
That's what
so
I want to get
beautiful.
across there.
I love it. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you as a continuation on our next episode.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Bye.
This is how legends are made.